If you've been reading headlines this week, you'd think Canada's job market just had a fantastic month. Unemployment down, job growth strong, everything's looking up. But if you're actually out there in the real world, if you're trying to hire people or looking for work yourself, or just watching what's happening with your friends and colleagues, does it actually feel like the job market is strong right now? Because I'm looking at the November jobs data, and there's a massive disconnect between what Stats Canada is celebrating and what's actually happening in the economy. Let's start at the national level, because this sets up everything. Canada added 54,000 jobs in November. Unemployment dropped from 6.9% to 6.5%. Third consecutive month of job growth. The headlines write themselves. But here's what they're not leading with. 63,000 of those jobs were part-time positions. Do the math on that. We added 54,000 jobs total, but 63,000 of them were part-time, which means we actually lost full-time employment. We just papered over it by adding a bunch of part-time positions. And over the past 3 months, September, October, November, combined part-time employment grew 2.7%, while full-time employment only grew 0.5%. Now, Stats Canada has a very specific spin on this. They say most people working part-time do so voluntarily because they go to school or care for family members. Okay, but the report also shows that 17.9% of part-time workers are working part-time involuntarily because they couldn't find full-time work or because economic conditions. That percentage hasn't improved from last year. So we're adding part-time jobs in an economy where 1 in 5 part-time workers would rather have full-time employment but can't get it. That is not a strong labor market. That's an economy that's adding whatever jobs it can to make the headline numbers look better. Now let's talk about which jobs are being added nationally, because this is where you start to see the real story. Healthcare and social assistance added 46,000 jobs in November, the biggest gain of any sector. Accommodations and food services added 14,000. Natural resources added 11,000. Meanwhile, wholesale and retail trade lost 34,000 jobs. And here's the pattern you see when you zoom out over the whole year. The jobs being added are either government adjacent sectors like healthcare, or they're service sectors and seasonal positions. The report even acknowledges this. It talks about how the November increase includes seasonal hiring, tourism, recreation, accommodation, retail. These sectors add workers heading into their busy seasons. But we're supposed to look at seasonal hiring patterns and celebrate it as robust job growth. Here's what that tells me. The underlying private sector economy isn't actually creating sustainable employment. We're adding whatever positions show up in the data, part-time, seasonal, government-funded, to make the numbers look acceptable. And here's the really telling part about who's getting these jobs. Youth employment, that's people aged 15 to 24, grew by 50,000 positions in November. That's 1.8% increase, and it was the first increase for youth since the start of the year. Let me put that in context for you. Youth bore the brunt of a difficult labor market through most of 2025. That's a direct quote from the report. Youth unemployment hit 14.7% in September, the highest level in over a decade excluding pandemic years. So we went all year with youth struggling to find work, and suddenly in November, right as we head into the Christmas shopping season, youth employment jumps. That's not economic strength, that's the malls hiring teenagers for the holiday rush. And we're counting those positions the same as full-time jobs, careers in the headline employment number. These aren't mortgage qualifying buyers. These are high school kids working part-time at the hat store. But they're being added to the total and used to make the job market look strong. Now, to be clear, I said the hat store because I worked at Cap Connection in high school, and before that I worked at McDonald's. But let's be real, our youth are no longer getting jobs at McDonald's and Tim Hortons because they are full of temporary foreign workers. Moving on. Here's what that tells me. The underlying private sector economy isn't actually creating sustainable employment. Like I said, we're adding whatever position shows up in the data, part-time, seasonal, youth employment to make the numbers look acceptable. And the workers themselves, they know this. The report includes data on job security, how confident employees feel about keeping their jobs and finding new ones. And this is where you see the disconnect between the headline unemployment rate and actual economic confidence. 73.6% of Canadian employees feel secure in their jobs, meaning they don't think they'll lose their position in the next 6 months. That sounds okay until you realize it's down 4.1 percentage points from 2 years ago. And it gets worse. Only 42.8% of employees think they could easily find another job with similar pay if they lost their current position. That's down from 49% 2 years ago. So even the people who have jobs right now are looking around at the market and thinking, I better hold on to this because if I lose it, I'm in trouble. That's not the mindset of an economy with strong labor demand. That's the mindset of an economy where people are nervous. And nervous employees don't buy houses. Now, let's bring this to Alberta because this is where the story gets interesting. Alberta added 29,000 jobs in November, the strongest provincial gain in the country. Unemployment fell to 6.5%, the lowest since March 2024. And compared to Canada overall, Alberta is legitimately doing better. Over the past year, Alberta added 105,000 jobs, and that's 4.2% employment growth, significantly better than the national average. On the surface, this looks like genuinely good news for the province. But here's what you need to understand about the type of growth Alberta is seeing. Even in Alberta, where we're outperforming the rest of Canada, the job growth is heavily concentrated in services. And within services, it's heavily weighted towards public administration and healthcare, government and government adjacent sectors. The goods producing sector, that's where it gets interesting, which brings us to Calgary specifically. The Calgary economic region added 36,800 jobs over the past year. Unemployment in the Calgary metro fell 7.9% in October to 7.3% in November. And every realtor in the city is going to be posting these numbers as a proof that Calgary's market is strong and you should buy now before prices go up. Let me show you what's actually happening. Of those 36,800 jobs Calgary added, 17,900 were full-time. 18,900 were part-time. So even in Calgary, which is doing better than most of Canada, about half of our job growth is part-time positions. And here's the breakdown by sector that really tells the story. The service producing sector added 43,400 jobs. Public administration alone added 14,800. Finance, insurance, and real estate added 11,500. The goods producing sector lost 6,600 jobs. Manufacturing lost 5,200. Construction lost 1,900. So Calgary is adding government jobs and service sector jobs while private sector employment in construction and manufacturing contracts. Does that sound like a city heading into a housing boom? I don't think so. Here's the piece that really exposes what's happening, the job vacancy data. Job vacancies in Calgary fell from 31,800 in Q2 2023 to 23,500 by early 2025. The vacancy rate dropped from 3.8% to 2.8%. Stats Canada spins this as returning to pre-pandemic levels and stabilization. But let's translate what that actually means. Companies in Calgary are posting fewer job openings, there's less demand for workers, employers aren't expanding. The report itself says, and I'm quoting directly this, suggests weaker hiring activity as Calgary's economy adjusts to slower growth, higher unemployment, and increased uncertainty across key sectors. Weaker hiring activity, slower growth, increased uncertainty. But the headline is, Calgary unemployment falls. So let's connect all of this to real estate because that's what actually matters for your decisions. You've got job growth that's half part-time positions, service sectors, jobs replacing goods producing jobs, government hiring masking private sector contraction, companies posting fewer job openings, workers who are increasingly worried about their job security. And you're supposed to look at this and think, great time to buy. The market's about to take off. Here's what this employment data actually tells you about Calgary real estate. If you're buying, you have less competition than the falling unemployment rate suggests, because the jobs being added aren't creating strong mortgage qualifying buyers at the rate the headline numbers imply. Part-time employees have a harder time qualifying. Workers worried about job security are being cautious. That gives you, as a buyer, negotiating room. But if you're buying with the expectation that this job growth is going to drive significant appreciation, you're misreading the data. The underlying economic fundamentals, private sector job creation, full-time employment growth, worker confidence, those aren't strong enough to support a boom. And if you're selling, understand that your buyer pool is employed but nervous. They're qualified but cautious. They're not feeling flush with cash. They're making careful decisions, price accordingly. Now, let me give you my cynical take on all of this. Stats Canada is a federal government agency. The Liberal government has been under enormous political pressure about the economy, immigration, inflation, housing costs, cost of living. And suddenly we get a jobs report where unemployment drops, job growth looks strong, everything's coming up roses. I'm not saying they're fabricating numbers, but I am saying that when you count part-time positions the same as full-time jobs in your headline number, when you include seasonal hiring in job growth, when you spin declining job vacancies as stabilization instead of weakening demand, you're making very specific choices about how to present data. And those choices make the economy look better than it actually is. The job vacancy data tells a different story. The full-time versus part-time split tells a different story. The job security data tells a different story. But those don't make good headlines. So here's what I'm watching now and what I'll dig into in future videos. How long can government hiring and service sector job growth sustain these employment numbers while private sector goods producing employment contracts? Because at some point, if the private sector isn't creating wealth, the government can't keep adding positions. The math doesn't math. And when that reverses, when government hiring slows, when those seasonal jobs disappear after the holidays, when part-time workers who wanted full-time employment get frustrated and drop out of the labor force, Calgary's employment picture could deteriorate quickly. And that will show up in real estate before it shows up in the headlines. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.